The smell of expensive perfume and sizzling steaks filled the air at Bellini's, where crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over white tablecloths and polished silverware. In this upscale restaurant nestled in downtown Chicago, people with money to spend came to see and be seen. Among the busy servers weaving between tables, Lily stood out not because she wanted to, but because she didn't. At 28, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that seemed at odds with the chaos around her. Her uniform, crisp white shirt, black pants, and a burgundy apron, was spotless despite having been on her feet for nearly 10 hours straight. This was her second shift of the day. "Order up for table 12, the head chef called out, sliding 2 plates of perfectly arranged seafood risotto across the counter. Lily nodded, her tired eyes briefly closing as she took a deep breath. The weight of exhaustion pulled at her shoulders, but her hands remained steady as she lifted the plates. 3 years of working at Bellini's had taught her how to move gracefully, even when her body begged for rest. "Everything okay, Lily?" asked Miguel, one of the busboys who had started a month ago. "Just another Tuesday," she replied with a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. What her co-workers didn't know, what nobody at Bellini's knew, was that after her shifts ended, Lily would return to a small apartment where her grandmother waited. At 76, Nana Rose's health was failing, and the medical bills kept piling up despite the insurance that barely covered the basics. The double shifts weren't a choice but a necessity. As Lily approached table 12, she switched on her professional smile. 2 seafood risottos, she announced, placing the dishes in front of a middle-aged couple celebrating an anniversary. "This looks divine," the woman said, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she reached for her wine glass. Lily stepped back, doing a quick scan of her section. Table 14 needed water refills. Table 9 was ready for their check. And table 16, the VIP section, had just been seated with tonight's special guests. "Heads up," whispered Thomas, another server, as he passed by with a tray of empty glasses. "That's Vincent Carter at 16. Lily's heart sank a little. Everyone who worked at Bellini's knew about Vincent Carter, the 35-year-old tech billionaire whose company had revolutionized artificial intelligence systems for homes. He was also known for being impossibly demanding and leaving devastating reviews online if his expectations weren't met. "It's my section," Lily said, straightening her already straight apron. "Good luck. I heard he made a server at the Pinnacle cry last month because his steak was medium instead of medium rare." With a nod of acknowledgement, Lily made her way toward table 16. Before she reached it, she took a moment to observe the group. There were 8 of them, 4 men and 4 women, all dressed as if they'd stepped out of a luxury magazine. At the center sat a man with dark hair swept back from his forehead, gesturing as he spoke. The others leaned in toward him like flowers following the sun. Vincent Carter. In her 3 years at Bellini's, Lily had served celebrities, politicians, and sports stars. She had learned that the truly confident ones rarely needed to prove their importance. It was always the ones like Carter, those who had something to prove, who created problems. "Good evening," she said as she approached the table. "Welcome to Bellini's. My name is Lily, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Vincent Carter looked up, his eyes briefly scanning her before returning to his companions. He didn't acknowledge her greeting. One of the women, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Lily's monthly rent, smiled apologetically. "We'll start with 2 bottles of the Chateau Margaux 2015, Carter said without looking at the wine list. "And make sure it's properly decanted." "Of course, sir," Lily replied, making a note. The Chateau Margaux was nearly $800 a bottle. "Would you like to hear about our specials this evening?" "If I wanted to hear about specials, I would have asked," he said, still not making eye contact. "But since you're still standing there, yes, go ahead." Lily maintained her professional demeanor as she described the chef's creations for the evening. She had long ago learned to separate her true self from her server persona. The real Lily, the one who had graduated with honors from the Eastman School of Music, the one who had once been described as a piano prodigy, stayed hidden behind her professional smile. "We'll need more time," one of the men said when she finished. "Of course. I'll be back with your wine." As Lily walked away, she overheard Carter say something that made the table erupt in laughter. She didn't turn around. Some battles weren't worth fighting, especially when your grandmother's medication depended on your income. The night progressed as most nights did at Bellini's. Lily moved efficiently between her tables, refilling glasses, delivering food, and managing the small crises that inevitably arose in a high-end restaurant. She kept an extra careful eye on table 16, making sure their wine glasses never dipped below half full and that bread was always available. Despite her attentiveness, Carter seemed determined to find fault. The temperature of the dining room was too cold, then too warm. The lighting was too bright. The pace of service was too slow. Each complaint was delivered with the casual cruelty of someone who had never had to worry about keeping a job. "Is everything all right with your entrees?" Lily asked after the main courses had been served. "My steak is overcooked," Carter said, cutting into a perfectly medium-rare filet mignon. "But I don't have time to wait for another one, so I'll suffer through it." "I apologize, sir. I'd be happy to—" "Just bring us another round of drinks," he interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. Lily nodded and turned toward the bar. As she walked away, she felt a familiar ache in her chest, not from Carter's rudeness, but from the life she had once imagined for herself. 6 years ago, she had been preparing for a career as a concert pianist. Her professors had talked about European tours and recording contracts. Then Nana Rose had her first stroke, and the health insurance they thought would cover everything turned out to cover almost nothing. 1 semester away from graduation, Lily had put her dreams on pause to care for the woman who had raised her after her parents died. It was supposed to be temporary, but temporary had stretched into years, and with each passing month, her once nimble fingers grew more accustomed to carrying plates than dancing across piano keys. "You're doing great," Miguel said when she reached the bar. "That guy's a jerk to everyone." "I've handled worse," Lily replied, placing her drink order with the bartender. As the evening wore on, Carter's group grew louder, fueled by expensive wine and the peculiar freedom that comes with extreme wealth. By the time they ordered dessert, several other diners had requested to be moved to tables farther away. "Have you noticed that grand piano?" Carter asked suddenly, pointing to the antique Steinway that sat in the corner of the dining room. It was primarily decorative, though occasionally the restaurant hired a pianist for special events. "Yes, sir," Lily answered, clearing away dessert plates. "It's a Steinway from the 1920s. Carter raised an eyebrow. "You know pianos?" Something in his tone made Lily wish she hadn't spoken. "Just a bit," she said carefully. "Well, this evening has been adequate," Carter said, leaning back in his chair. His eyes traveled from the piano to Lily, a slow smile spreading across his face. "But I find myself wanting some entertainment." The woman in the expensive dress touched his arm. "Vincent, I'm sure they have policies about..." "About what? Using a piano that's sitting right there?" Carter laughed. "What's the point of having it if nobody plays it?" Lily felt the attention of the entire table shift to her. She knew what was coming before Carter even opened his mouth again. "You," he said, pointing at her. "You seem to know about pianos. Why don't you play something for us?" The request, which was really more of a command, hung in the air between them. Lily glanced toward the manager's office, knowing full well that staff performances were against restaurant policy. She also knew that refusing a direct request from Vincent Carter would likely result in a complaint that could cost her job. "I'm afraid I'm not very good," she said, hoping to discourage him. Carter's smile widened. "I'll add an extra 500 to the tip if you can play anything more complicated than Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." His friends laughed, and Lily felt her cheeks warm. It wasn't just about the money, although $500 would cover Nana Rose's heart medication for the month. It was about the assumption that she couldn't possibly be talented, that she was just a server. "Nothing more. I really shouldn't," she began, but Carter cut her off. "Make it 1,000, he said, pulling out his wallet and placing $100 bills on the table. "One song. Your choice." The restaurant had grown quieter as nearby tables tuned into the exchange. Lily saw her manager, Mr. Wallace, emerge from his office, drawn by the unusual silence. Their eyes met across the room, and she could read the question in his expression. In that moment, standing beside table 16 with Vincent Carter's challenging stare fixed upon her, Lily felt a spark of something she hadn't experienced in years. Not anger exactly, but a deep desire to be seen, truly seen for who she was beneath the server's uniform. She thought of the countless hours she had spent at the piano as a child, her small fingers reaching for keys that seemed impossibly far apart. She thought of the competitions, the scholarships, the standing ovations. and she thought of the dusty digital keyboard tucked under her bed at home, which she still played late at night with headphones on so as not to wake Nana Rose. A strange calm settled over Lily as she made her decision. With a slight nod to Mr. Wallace, who looked confused but didn't interfere, she carefully placed her serving tray on an empty table and turned toward the piano that hadn't been properly played in years. The room held its breath as she approached the instrument that had once been the center of her world. The applause seemed to come from another world as Lily's fingers lifted from the final keys. For a moment she remained perfectly still, her eyes closed, allowing the last echoes of Chopin's ballade to fade into the high ceilings of Bellini's. When she finally opened her eyes, the expression on people's faces told her everything. Diners who had been irritated by Vincent Carter's loud group now stood beside their tables. Staff members had emerged from the kitchen, still wearing their aprons and chef hats. Mr. Wallace, who should have been furious about her breaking restaurant policy, was wiping something suspiciously like tears from the corner of his eye, and Vincent Carter, the arrogant tech billionaire who had meant to humiliate her, sat with his mouth slightly open, the mockery gone from his expression. Lily rose from the piano bench, suddenly aware of how exposed she felt. For 6 minutes she had forgotten she was a waitress. She had forgotten about the double shifts and the mounting medical bills. She had been once again the person she was always meant to be. The silence broke as someone started to clap. Others joined in, and soon the entire restaurant thundered with applause. Lily gave a small bow, her cheeks warming with a mixture of embarrassment and pride. "Where did you learn to play like that?" asked a woman who had been dining alone near the piano. Before Lily could answer, another voice cut through the noise. "That wasn't just playing," Vincent Carter said, rising from his seat. "That was art." He walked toward her, his previous arrogance replaced by something Lily couldn't quite identify. Respect, perhaps, or regret. The restaurant quieted as he approached. "You've made me look like quite the fool," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "That wasn't my intention," Lily replied. "I know." He paused, studying her face as if seeing her for the first time. "You're not just a waitress, are you?" The question stung more than he could know. "I am a waitress," she said firmly. "I'm also a pianist." "You're wasted here," he said, gesturing around the restaurant. Lily felt a flash of anger. "I'm not wasted anywhere. I made a choice." "Well, what choice was that?" She hesitated. Her life story wasn't something she shared with customers, especially not ones who had tried to embarrass her minutes earlier. But something in his expression, a genuine curiosity, made her answer. "My grandmother had a stroke 6 years ago. I was 1 semester away from graduating from music school. She raised me after my parents died, and she needed me, so I came home." Vincent nodded slowly, absorbing this information. "And now? Now I work double shifts to pay for her care. And at night I play on a digital keyboard with headphones so I don't wake her up." The crowd around them had begun to disperse, returning to their tables, though many still cast glances their way. Mr. Wallace approached, his expression a mixture of awe and concern. "Lily," he began, "that was incredible. But you know the policy about staff performances." "I know. And I'm sorry," she said, the reality of what she had just done sinking in. "It won't happen again." "No, it won't," Mr. Wallace agreed. Then to her surprise, he smiled. "Because next time we'll schedule it properly. How would you feel about playing here on Friday and Saturday evenings? We'd pay you, of course. Not as much as you deserve, but it would be in addition to your server wages." Lily stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. "Are you serious?" "Completely. That's the most alive I've seen this restaurant in years." "I'll double whatever he's offering," Vincent interrupted. Mr. Wallace frowned. "Mr. Carter, with all due respect, not to take her away," Vincent clarified. "To have her play at a charity event I'm hosting next month. 1 night her rate, no serving duties. Just music." Lily looked between the two men, feeling as though she had stepped into someone else's life. Just an hour ago she had been an invisible server. Now they were discussing her as if she were a valuable commodity. I need to think about it," she said finally. "My grandmother—" "Bring her," Vincent said, as if it were the simplest solution in the world. Then, seeming to catch himself, he added more gently, "If she's well enough to attend, of course." A commotion from the entrance of the restaurant drew their attention. A group of new customers had arrived, and the hostess was frantically trying to find them a table. The regular rhythm of the restaurant was resuming. I should get back to work, Lily said, suddenly remembering her other tables. I still have customers. Of course, Mr. Wallace nodded. But we'll talk more about this later. As Lily turned to go, Vincent reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He counted out several bills, far more than the 1,000 he had promised, and held them out to her. You earned this, he said. And I'm sorry for how I behaved earlier. It was unworthy. Lily hesitated, then took the money. Not out of forgiveness, but out of necessity. This would cover Nana Rose's medication for several months. Thank you, she said simply. As she walked back to her section, Lily felt different. Her steps were lighter, her back straighter. For the first time in years, someone had seen her, truly seen her, as more than just a server. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. Customers who had witnessed her performance kept stopping by her section to ask questions or offer compliments. Several left their business cards with notes scribbled on the back. Call me if you ever want to record. My brother runs a music school. Would you consider playing at my daughter's wedding? By the time she clocked out at midnight, Lily's apron pocket bulged with cards and her mind swam with possibilities. The night air felt crisp against her skin as she stepped outside, wrapping her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders. Lily! She turned to see Miguel running after her, still wearing his busboy uniform. You forgot this, he said, handing her a sleek business card printed on heavy stock. Vincent Carter's name was embossed in silver across the top, with a personal phone number handwritten on the back. He left it with your tip, Miguel explained. Said to tell you he meant what he said about the charity event. He grinned. Also, he tipped everyone at the restaurant $100 each after you played. Said the evening turned out to be worth it after all. Lily tucked the card into her pocket alongside the others. Thanks, Miguel. So, are you going to call him? Play at his fancy event? She shrugged but couldn't help smiling. I don't know, maybe. You should. You're amazing, Lily. I had no idea you could play like that. There's a lot people don't know about each other, she said softly. The bus stop was empty when she arrived. Sitting on the cold metal bench, Lily pulled out her phone to check the time. 20 minutes until the next bus. She would get home around 1 in the morning, check on Nana Rose, maybe even practice a little if she wasn't too tired. Her phone buzzed with a text from her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who looked in on Nana Rose when Lily worked late. Your grandmother is sleeping peacefully. Take your time coming home. P.S. Did you eat dinner? There's leftover soup in your fridge. Lily smiled at the message. Small kindnesses like these had kept her going over the years. Mrs. Chen watching over Nana Rose. Miguel running after her with forgotten items. Even Mr. Wallace, who had bent the rules more than once to accommodate her difficult schedule. As she waited for the bus, Lily found herself thinking about Vincent Carter's offer. One performance at a charity event would pay more than a month of double shifts. And if Mr. Wallace was serious about hiring her to play at Bellini's on weekends, for the first time in years, Lily allowed herself to imagine a different future. One where she didn't have to choose between caring for Nana Rose and pursuing her passion. One where she could be both a granddaughter and a pianist. The bus appeared around the corner, its headlights cutting through the darkness. As Lily stood to board, she felt the weight of all those business. Cards in her pocket, each one representing a door that had suddenly opened. The tired waitress who had started her shift this morning could never have imagined ending her day like this. Life had a strange way of circling back, of reconnecting people with the dreams they thought they had abandoned. As the bus pulled away from the curb, Lily gazed out the window at the city lights. Tomorrow she would call the numbers on those cards. Tomorrow she would talk to Mr. Wallace about a weekend position. Tomorrow she would tell Nana Rose that maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. But tonight, as the bus carried her through the sleeping city, Lily closed her eyes and replayed the moment her fingers had first touched those piano keys. The moment when, after 6 long years, she had finally found herself again. The murmur of conversation in Bellini's grew quieter as Lily stood beside the grand piano. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Vincent Carter's smug smile was fixed on her from across the room, and she felt the weight of every eye in the restaurant. For a moment, she considered walking away. She could apologize, return to her tables, and pretend this had never happened. Mr. Wallace would probably be relieved. Staff performances were strictly against restaurant policy. But as her fingers brushed against the polished wood of the Steinway, Something shifted inside her. 6 years. It had been 6 years since she had touched a real grand piano. Her digital keyboard at home, the one she played with headphones late at night, was nothing compared to this. This was like meeting an old friend. Lily sat down slowly on the bench, adjusting it with the familiar motion that had once been as natural as breathing. The keys gleamed under the restaurant's soft lighting, inviting her home. "Don't embarrass yourself," a voice in her head warned. "You're out of practice. You're not who you used to be." But another voice, one that sounded remarkably like Nana Rose's, whispered back, "Show them who you really are." Lily closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and placed her hands on the keys. The first notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor filled the room. It was like diving into cool water on a hot day, the shock of the change, then the exhilarating feeling of being exactly where you belong. Her fingers remembered what her mind had tried to forget. They flew across the keys, finding each note with perfect precision. The piece began softly, almost tentatively, before building to its complex middle section. As Lily played, the years of double shifts and worry lines faded away. She was no longer in Bellini, surrounded by wealthy diners. She was back in the concert hall of her music school, her professors nodding approvingly as she navigated the difficult passages. She had forgotten how much she loved this, not just playing, but feeling the music flow through her like electricity. Her body swayed slightly with the rhythm, her face reflecting every emotion in the piece: joy, longing, determination. Lily didn't notice when the waiter stopped serving, or when the kitchen staff emerged to listen. She didn't see Mr. Wallace step out of his office, his reprimand dying on his lips as he heard what was happening, and she certainly didn't see the transformation on Vincent Carter's face as his arrogant smile melted into pure astonishment. For 6 minutes, there was only Lily and the piano and Chopin. Everything else disappeared. As she approached the thunderous finale, her fingers danced across the keys with increasing intensity. The final chords rang out, powerful and resolute, before fading into a silence so complete you could hear the soft hum of the heating system. Lily's hands came to rest in her lap. She opened her eyes slowly, almost afraid of what she might see. The restaurant had gone completely still. Forks were frozen mid-air. Conversations had stopped mid-sentence. Every face was turned toward her, wearing expressions that ranged from shock to wonder. Then someone started to clap. Others joined in, and suddenly the entire restaurant erupted in applause. Some people stood from their tables. A woman near the front wiped tears from her eyes. Mr. Wallace was nodding, a smile breaking through his usually stern expression. Miguel and the other servers were clapping the loudest, pride evident in their faces. They had worked alongside Lily for years, never knowing what she was capable of. And Vincent Carter? He sat perfectly still, the color drained from his face, looking as though he'd just witnessed something he couldn't quite comprehend. Lily stood and gave a small bow, her cheeks flushing. The reality of what she'd just done, breaking restaurant policy, risking her job, began to sink in. But the exhilaration of playing again, of being truly seen for the first time in years, outweighed any potential consequences. As the applause began to die down, she turned to make her way back to her section, ready to resume her role as a server. "Wait." The voice came from behind her. Vincent Carter had risen from his table and was walking toward her, his expression unreadable. The restaurant grew quiet again, everyone watching to see what would happen next. "Where did you learn to play like that?" he asked when he reached her. Lily met his gaze directly. "Eastman School of Music. I was 1 semester away from graduating when my grandmother had a stroke." Understanding flickered across his face. "So you gave it up to take care of her?" It wasn't a question, but Lily nodded anyway. "And now you serve tables at Bellini's." "Now I do whatever I need to do to make sure she's cared for." Lily corrected him gently. Vincent was silent for a moment, studying her face. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, handing it to her. "I sit on the board of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra," he said. "We fund a yearly showcase for exceptional talent. I'd like you to audition." Lily stared at the card in her hand. I haven't performed publicly in years." "You just did," he pointed out. "And you captivated everyone in this room." Before she could respond, Mr. Wallace approached, his expression a mix of emotions. Lily, he began, I need to speak with you about what just happened. Her stomach dropped. This was it. She was going to lose her job. How would she pay for Nana Rose's medication? I know staff performances aren't allowed, she said quickly. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. You shouldn't have kept this talent hidden for 3 years, Mr. Wallace interrupted. Do you have any idea what this could mean for Bellini's? Live piano music on weekend nights. It would transform the atmosphere entirely. Lily blinked, trying to process what she was hearing. You're offering me a job? As a pianist? In addition to your server duties if you want them. Or just as our pianist if you'd prefer. We'd have to discuss the details, of course. Vincent cleared his throat. I believe I was in the middle of offering her an audition with the symphony. Mr. Wallace turned to him, eyebrows raised. The symphony? Well, that would be an amazing opportunity, Lily finished for him, finding her voice again. But I have commitments. My grandmother needs care throughout the day. I can't just... There are solutions for that, Vincent said, his tone softer than she'd heard it all evening. Healthcare aides, specialty programs. If it's a question of finances, it's a question of love, Lily said simply. She raised me after my parents died. She's the reason I even had the chance to study piano in the first place. I can't just hand her care over to strangers. Something shifted in Vincent's expression. Respect, perhaps, or recognition. I understand family obligation more than you might think. But talent like yours, it deserves to be heard. A commotion from another table caught Mr. Wallace's attention. We should continue this discussion later, he said. Lily, take 10 minutes, then back to your section. Mr. Carter, I hope you understand she has other customers. As Mr. Wallace hurried away, Vincent turned back to Lily. I meant what I said. Call the number on that card. The audition is in 2 weeks. Even if you're just curious, come and play. Let people hear you. With that, he returned to his table, leaving Lily standing by the piano, the business card clutched in her hand like a lifeline. In the employee break room, Lily sat alone trying to process what had just happened. Her fingers still tingled from playing, her body remembering what it felt like to do what she was born to do. Miguel poked his head in, grinning from ear to ear. The whole restaurant is buzzing about you. Why didn't you ever tell us you could play like that? Lily shrugged, a small smile tugging at her lips. It never came up. Never came up? Lily, you play like... He struggled to find the words. Like someone who should be selling out concert halls, not refilling water glasses. Life doesn't always work out the way we plan, she said softly. Miguel's expression grew serious. Are you going to take that audition? With the symphony? Lily looked down at Vincent's card, tracing her finger over the embossed lettering. I don't know. It's been so long, but you haven't lost it, Miguel pointed out. Anyone with ears could tell that. Before Lily could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Mrs. Chen, her elderly neighbor who checked in on Nana Rose when Lily worked late shifts. Your grandmother is asking about you. Says she had a feeling something important happened tonight. All okay? A lump formed in Lily's throat. Even after all these years, Nana Rose still had that intuition. That special sense when it came to her granddaughter. I should call her, Lily said. Standing up. Hey, Miguel said as she headed for the door. Whatever you decide about the audition or the weekend piano gig here, we're all behind you. You know that, right? Lily nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by the possibilities that had opened up in the space of one evening. For years she had been sleepwalking through life, doing what needed to be done, setting aside her own dreams. Now those dreams were awakening again, stretching and yawning as if from a long sleep. As she dialed Nana Rose's number, Lily found herself wondering what her grandmother would say about all this. Nana had always been her biggest supporter, the one who scraped together money for piano lessons when they could barely afford rent. Hello? Nana Rose's voice, slightly slurred from her stroke but still warm and familiar. Hi, Nana. You'll never believe what happened tonight. You played the piano, Nana Rose said immediately. Lily froze. How did you know? A soft chuckle came through the phone. Because I heard it in your voice the moment you said hello. You sound like yourself again. Tears sprang to Lily's eyes. I did play. On a beautiful old Steinway at the restaurant. And people liked it. A lot. Lily took a deep breath. Nana, I've been offered an audition with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. The silence that followed wasn't what Lily expected. When Nana Rose finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. It's about time the world heard what I've always known. You were born for this, sweetie. But what about you? Your care. I can't just— You can and you will. Nana Rose interrupted with surprising firmness. I didn't raise you to hide your light under a bushel. We'll figure out the rest as we go. As Lily ended the call and prepared to return to her table, she felt lighter somehow, as if a weight she'd carried for years had begun to lift. The piano had called her back tonight, reminding her of who she really was beneath the server's uniform. And for the first time in a very long time, she had answered. 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Lily found herself living a double life, still working shifts at Bellini's while spending every spare moment at the piano. Mr. Wallace had kept his word, setting up a small electronic keyboard in the break room where she could practice during her lunch breaks. At home, she dusted off her music books, long untouched, and began rebuilding, the calluses on her fingertips that had softened over years of carrying plates instead of playing concertos. The morning of the symphony audition arrived with pale, October sunshine streaming through the thin curtains of her apartment. Lily had barely slept. She'd stayed up late practicing, her fingers working through difficult passages over and over until they flowed naturally again. Now, as she made coffee in the tiny kitchen, her hands trembled slightly. You're going to be amazing, Nana Rose said from the doorway of her bedroom. She leaned heavily on her walker, her left side still weak from the stroke, but her eyes were bright and alert. You should be resting, Lily said, hurrying over to help her grandmother to a chair. I've rested enough, Nana Rose replied with a dismissive wave. Today's too important. I wouldn't miss seeing you off, Lily smiled, though her stomach was tied in knots. It's just an audition, Nana. Nothing might come of it. Nonsense. That fancy businessman wouldn't have invited you if he didn't think you had something special. Nana Rose reached out to pat Lily's hand. I've known it since you were 5 years old. Sitting on that piano bench with your feet dangling, barely able to reach the pedals. The memory brought warmth to Lily's chest. Her childhood piano, a battered upright that Nana had bought secondhand when Lily first showed interest in music. They couldn't afford lessons then, so Nana had checked out instructional books from the library and sat beside Lily every evening after dinner, learning alongside her. I still don't know how we're going to manage if something does come of this, Lily admitted, voicing the worry that had kept her awake for the past 2 weeks. The home healthcare aide Mrs. Chen recommended is expensive, and if I'm rehearsing or performing during the day, we'll figure it out, Nana Rose said firmly. We always do. Now go get dressed in something that makes you feel like a concert pianist, not a waitress. This is your day. An hour later, Lily stood outside the imposing glass and steel building that housed the Chicago Symphony Orchestra's administrative offices and rehearsal spaces. She wore her best outfit, a simple black dress she'd bought for a cousin's wedding 3 years ago, and a pair of low heels she'd polished the night before. Her sheet music was tucked into a folder, though she'd be playing from memory. You can do this, she whispered to herself, and pushed through the revolving door. The lobby was sleek and modern, with photographs of current orchestra members lining the walls. A security guard directed her to the 4th floor, where the auditions were being held. In the elevator, Lily closed her eyes and took deep breaths, trying to calm her racing heart. When the doors opened, she found herself in a hallway where several other musicians waited, instruments in hand. A violinist practiced silently, her fingers dancing over the strings without making a sound. A cellist studied his sheet music with intense concentration. They all looked so professional, so prepared. Lily felt out of place, like she was playing dress-up in a world she'd abandoned years ago. Lily. A familiar voice called her name, and she turned to see Vincent Carter walking toward her, looking very different from the arrogant diner she'd served 2 weeks ago. In place of his dismissive smirk, he wore a genuine smile. You came. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't, she admitted. But you're here now. He gestured for her to follow him down a side corridor. The director's eager to meet you. I may have shown him a video of your performance at Bellini's. A video? Lily stopped walking. Someone recorded me. Vincent had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Several people did, actually. You've become something of an internet sensation in certain classical music circles. Not viral or anything, he added quickly, seeing her expression. Just among people who recognize exceptional talent when they hear it. The idea that strangers had seen her play, That her impromptu performance had been shared beyond the walls of Bellini's made Lily's head spin. But there was no time to process this new information. They had arrived at a door marked Rehearsal Studio C. "This is where you'll audition," Vincent explained. "The panel includes the director, the principal pianist, and 2 board members besides myself. Just play the way you did at the restaurant, like there's nothing in the world but you and the music." Before she could respond, the door opened and a man with silver hair and kind eyes stepped out. "Ah, you must be Lily. I'm Thomas Wilson, the director. We've been looking forward to hearing you play." He shook her hand warmly. "That video was quite impressive, though I always prefer a live performance to make any judgments." Lily followed him into the studio, where 3 other people sat behind a long table. In the center of the room stood a magnificent Steinway concert grand piano, much larger than the one at Bellini's. Its lid was raised to full stick, and under the bright studio lights, it gleamed like a black mirror. "Whenever you're ready," Thomas said, taking his seat with the others. "What will you be playing for us today?" Lily placed her folder on the bench beside her but didn't open it. "Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor, and then Debussy's Clair de Lune, if that's acceptable." Thomas nodded approvingly. 2 very different pieces. Excellent choices to show range. As Lily sat at the piano adjusting the bench to her height, she was struck by how familiar this all felt. The pre-performance ritual, the flutter of anticipation, the silence before the first note. 6 years had passed, but her body remembered. She placed her hands on the keys, took a deep breath, and began to play. The Chopin started as it always did, with that simple, questioning melody that soon gave way to increasingly complex passages. But this time, with a proper concert piano beneath her fingers, Lily found new depths in the music. The instrument responded to her touch with a sensitivity the restaurant piano couldn't match, allowing her to shape each phrase exactly as she heard it in her mind. She glanced briefly at the panel as she moved into the piece's tumultuous middle section. Thomas had closed his eyes, his head moving slightly with the music. The principal pianist leaned forward, watching her hands with professional interest. And Vincent was smiling, not with smugness but with something that looked like pride, as if her success would somehow be his too. Lily returned her focus to the music, losing herself in the building drama of Chopin's masterpiece. When the final chords resonated through the studio, there was a moment of perfect silence before Thomas opened his eyes and nodded to her. "Beautiful. And the Debussy?" Without pausing, Lily transitioned to the gentle opening of Clair de Lune, its impressionistic harmonies floating like moonlight on water. Where the Chopin had showcased her technical ability, this piece displayed her sensitivity, her understanding of musical color and shade. She played it like a love letter to the instrument, to music itself, grateful for this second chance she never thought she'd have. When she finished, the room remained silent for several heartbeats. Then Thomas stood up, followed by the others. "Well," he said simply, "I think we've found our featured soloist for the Young Artist Showcase." The principal pianist, a woman with steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, spoke for the first time. "Your technique needs refinement. Those years away from serious practice show in your 4th and 5th fingers especially. But your musicality," she paused, her professional reserve softening slightly, "that can't be taught. You either have it or you don't. And you most certainly do." "There would be a stipend, of course," Thomas continued, "and rehearsals twice weekly with the orchestra leading up to the performance. We'd feature you playing the first movement of a concerto, perhaps the Grieg, and 1 solo piece of your choosing." Lily's mind was spinning. This was happening too fast. Just weeks ago, her biggest concern had been keeping up with her tables during dinner rush hour. Now these people were talking about concertos and orchestras as if she belonged in their world. I need to consider the schedule," she said, finally thinking of Nana Rose. "I have responsibilities that might make rehearsals difficult." Vincent stepped forward. "About that, the Symphony Foundation has a community outreach program that includes support for promising musicians facing hardship." He handed her a folder she hadn't noticed him carrying. "This includes information about healthcare partnerships that might be relevant to your situation with your grandmother." Lily stared at the folder, then up at Vincent. "Why are you doing all this? You don't even know me." For a moment he seemed caught off guard by the direct question. Then his expression softened. Let's just say I know what it's like to have talent recognized too late. Mine was in business, not music. But I remember what it felt like when someone finally saw potential in me and gave me a real chance. He glanced at the others. Could you give us a minute? When they had stepped out of the studio, Vincent continued. That night at Bellini's, I was being an entitled jerk. I'm not proud of it. But when you played, it reminded me that true talent doesn't care about social status or bank accounts. It exists wherever passion and hard work meet opportunity. He smiled wryly. Consider this my way of apologizing while also doing something worthwhile for the arts community. Before Lily could respond, her phone buzzed. She pulled it from her purse, seeing Mrs. Chen's number on the screen. Her heart sank. I'm sorry, I need to take this, she said, stepping away. Hello, is everything okay? Mrs. Chen's voice came through, sounding strangely excited rather than concerned. Lily, your grandmother asked me to call you. She didn't want to interrupt your audition, but she couldn't wait to tell you. A letter came today from the Monroe Arts Foundation. You've been awarded their returning artist grant. She opened it because it looked important. I hope that's okay. Lily almost dropped the phone. She had applied for that grant 6 months ago, never expecting anything to come of it. The foundation supported artists who had taken career breaks for family or health reasons. Are you sure? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The letter says $20,000, Mrs. Chen confirmed. Your grandmother is crying happy tears. She says to tell you it's a sign. As Lily ended the call and turned back to Vincent, she felt something shift into place, as if the universe was finally aligning in her favor after years of struggle. Is everything all right? He asked, noting her expression. Yes, Lily said, a smile spreading across her face. Everything is perfect, actually. For the first time in 6 years, she truly believed it. 6 months later, the concert hall of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra was filled to capacity. Behind the heavy velvet curtain, Lily stood in a simple black evening gown, her hands clasped tightly together as she listened to the orchestra tuning their instruments. The familiar sounds, the oboe's A note, the strings adjusting, the gentle tap of the timpani, brought back memories of her college recitals. But this was different. This was the moment her life had been building toward, even during those years when music seemed like a distant dream. Nervous? Thomas Wilson appeared beside her, elegant in his conductor's tuxedo. Terrified, Lily admitted with a small laugh. But the good kind of terrified. Thomas smiled warmly. That never goes away, you know. I've been conducting for 30 years, and I still get butterflies before every performance. It means you care. He checked his watch. 5 minutes. Remember what we practiced. The orchestra follows you in the cadenza, not the other way around. Trust yourself. As Thomas walked away to take his position, Lily closed her eyes and took several deep breaths. The past 6 months had transformed her life in ways she could never have imagined. The grant from the Monroe Arts Foundation had allowed her to hire full-time care for Nana Rose, giving Lily the freedom to focus on music again. She had resigned from Bellini's, though she still visited regularly, especially on Friday nights when Miguel, now promoted to head server, saved her favorite table near the piano where a young music student from the local university now played. Vincent Carter had kept his promise, using his connections to help her navigate the often closed world of classical music. To her surprise, they had developed an unlikely friendship. The arrogant businessman had shown himself to be a complicated person, driven and demanding. Yes, but also capable of genuine kindness when it mattered. 1 minute. Ms. Chen, the stage manager called softly. Lily opened her eyes and glanced toward the wings, where Nana Rose sat in her wheelchair, attended by her caregiver. Despite the doctor's concerns about her health, Nana had insisted on being present tonight. Wild horses couldn't keep me away, she had declared that morning as Lily helped her with her special occasion dress, a blue silk outfit they had splurged on together. Nana caught her looking and gave a thumbs up, her smile so bright it seemed to light up even the darkened wings of the stage. Beside her stood Mrs. Chen, who had become like family over these years, and behind them, Vincent, looking uncharacteristically nervous himself. The stage manager nodded to Lily. It was time. The curtain rose, revealing the orchestra seated in a semicircle, with the massive Steinway concert grand piano in the center. The audience applauded as Thomas walked out to the conductor's podium and bowed. Then he turned and extended his hand toward the wings. Lily took a final deep breath and stepped onto the stage. The lights were blinding at first, making the audience a dark, faceless mass beyond the stage. But as she walked to the piano and took her bow, she could make out individual faces in the front rows. Mr. Wallace from Bellini's, beaming with pride. The regular customers who had witnessed her first impromptu performance. Thomas, Miguel, and several other staff members, dressed in their finest clothes, looking slightly out of place but thrilled to be there. And in the center of the front row, a group of children from the community music program Lily had started with part of her grant money. Kids who, like her, had talent but lacked opportunity. They wiggled in their seats with excitement, their parents gently shushing them. Lily sat at the piano, adjusted the bench, and nodded to Thomas. He raised his baton, and the orchestra began the opening notes of Grieg's Piano Concerto in A minor. The piece began with a dramatic flourish from the piano, a cascading series of chords that never failed, to make audiences sit up straighter in their seats. Lily's fingers hit the keys with confidence, the hours of practice evident in every note. When the orchestra joined in with the main theme, she felt that magical connection that only comes in live performance, the give and take between soloist and ensemble, the shared breath of music making. As the first movement progressed, Lily found herself thinking of the journey that had brought her here. The childhood lessons at the worn-out upright piano, the scholarship to music school, the heartbreaking decision to leave it all behind when Nana Rose needed her, the long years of waiting tables playing only in stolen moments at night, and then that fateful evening when Vincent Carter had tried to humiliate her and instead had unwittingly opened the door back to her true calling. The cadenza arrived, the extended solo passage, where the orchestra falls silent and the pianist alone takes center stage. Lily's fingers danced across the keys, building the tension note by note. In this moment, there was no audience, no orchestra, no past or future, only the music flowing through her like a river finding its way home to the sea. When the orchestra rejoined for the powerful conclusion of the movement, Lily felt tears prickling behind her eyes, not tears of sadness, but of completion, of a circle finally closed. The final chords rang out, and for a moment the concert hall was completely silent. Then the audience erupted in applause. As Lily stood to acknowledge them, she saw people rising to their feet section by section, until the entire hall was giving her a standing ovation. Thomas was beaming as he shook her hand. The concertmaster nodded her approval, but Lily's eyes sought out Nana Rose, who was openly weeping in the wings, her hands clasped over her heart. After 3 curtain calls, Lily finally exited the stage, immediately enveloped in a hug by her grandmother. "You did it, sweetheart," Nana Rose whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. "You found your way back." "We did it," Lily corrected her gently. "I wouldn't be here without you." The backstage area buzzed with activity as orchestra members packed up their instruments and well-wishers waited to congratulate the soloists. Vincent approached, holding a bouquet of white lilies. "These are from the symphony board," he said, handing them to her, "though I may have had some input on the choice of flower." He smiled, looking genuinely happy for her. "You were magnificent. Even better than at Bellini's, if that's possible." "Thank you," Lily said, meaning it for much more than the flowers. "For everything." Vincent shook his head. "You did all the hard work. I just opened a door. You're the one who walked through it." A commotion near the stage door drew their attention. A small group of reporters and photographers had been allowed backstage, and they were now making their way toward Lily, calling out questions. "Ms. Chen, how does it feel to return to music after such a long absence? Will you be recording an album? Is it true you were discovered while working as a waitress?" Vincent stepped forward protectively, but Lily touched his arm to stop him. "It's okay," she said quietly. "This is part of it too." Facing the reporters, Lily spoke clearly and simply. 6 months ago, I was serving tables at Bellini's restaurant. I loved that job and I was good at it. But there was a part of me that had been sleeping for a long time. She glanced at Nana Rose. "My grandmother always told me that true talent never really goes away. It just waits for the right moment to reappear. I'm grateful that my moment finally came." Later that night, long after the applause had faded and the concert hall had emptied, Lily sat alone at her kitchen table. The evening gown had been replaced by comfortable pajamas, the formal updo exchanged for a simple ponytail. A cup of tea steamed beside her as she opened her laptop and began to type. "Dear Monroe Arts Foundation," she wrote, "I'm writing to thank you for the grant that changed my life, and to share how I hope to pay that opportunity forward." She outlined her plans to expand the community music program she'd started, focusing on students from backgrounds like hers, talented but lacking resources. She described her vision for a scholarship fund specifically for musicians who had to pause their careers for family obligations. As she typed, Lily could hear Nana Rose's gentle snoring from the bedroom down the hall. The new apartment they shared was nothing fancy, but it was a major upgrade from their previous place. Ground floor for easier wheelchair access, with a small room that Lily had converted into a home studio with a quality upright piano. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be more rehearsals, upcoming performances, decisions about recording offers. The path ahead wasn't certain. Nothing in life ever was. But for the first time in years, Lily felt fully awake and alive, using all the parts of herself that made her who she was. She finished her email, sent it, and closed the laptop. On the counter lay the evening's program with her name printed in elegant script, piano soloist Lily Chen. Beside it was a framed photograph of her parents, taken when she was just a baby. They would have been so proud. Lily picked up her tea and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, another person with dreams set aside was waiting for their moment to shine again. Maybe they would hear her story and take heart. Maybe they would find the courage to reach for a second chance. As she stood there, Lily realized that the most beautiful music of all was the kind you made with your life. Each choice, each sacrifice, each moment of courage, a note in the ongoing symphony of being human. Her own composition was still being written one day at a time, but at last she was playing her true melody,